Can you believe that just days after I buried the love of my life, my own sister stood up at her son's first birthday party, looked me in the eye, and claimed that my deceased husband was the father of her child, and then she tried to steal half of my home? What the hell happened next is a story I never thought I'd have to tell. My name is Bridget, and I never thought I'd be a widow at 34. 3 months ago, my entire world shattered when Adam, my incredible husband of 11 years, was suddenly ripped away by a brain aneurysm. The grief, it was a physical weight, pressing down on every breath. Just a week after his funeral, I was dragging myself through life, numb. But family obligations, you know how they are, pulled me to my nephew Lucas's first birthday. I walked into that party, still raw, still barely holding myself together. Then, like a punch to the gut, my sister Cassandra made her grand announcement. She declared, in front of everyone, that Lucas was Adam's son. Not only that, but she brandished what she claimed was Adam's will, stating she was entitled to half of our $800,000 house as inheritance for his child. My parents were stunned. The guests whispered, and me? I stood there, staring at her, trying so hard to hold back a laugh. An incredulous, almost hysterical laugh, because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was why her elaborate lie was so utterly, impossibly ridiculous. Adam and I met 12 years ago at a charity auction. He was just special, thoughtful, observant, generous. He'd outbid everyone for a beautiful watercolor of the Boston skyline that I'd been admiring. And then, with those blue eyes crinkling at the corners, he walked right over and handed it to me. I think it belongs with you, he'd said. I fell hard. He was a brilliant corporate attorney, but so humble, the kind of man who remembered everyone's name and asked genuine questions about their lives. 8 months later, he proposed on the harbor, the actual skyline mirroring that painting. We bought our dream home, a beautiful $800,000 Victorian in Beacon Hill, after our first anniversary. We envisioned children playing in the small garden out back, but those children never came. We tried for years. Doctors, tests, for heartbreaking rounds of IVF that drained not just our savings, but our spirits. I still remember the quiet drive home after the last failed attempt, Adam reaching across to hold my hand, neither of us needing to speak. We just knew. We can still have a beautiful life, he'd whispered that night. You and me, that is enough. And he meant it. We rebuilt our dreams, pouring ourselves into our careers and traveling. We renovated our house, room by room, until it was everything I'd ever imagined. Adam supported me when I launched my own interior design firm. Our life was full, happy, just different. My younger sister, Cassandra, was always kind of in the periphery of our happiness. For years younger, she was the family's wild child, bouncing between jobs and relationships. My parents worried constantly, which often meant making excuses for her and bailing her out financially. Cassandra and I had a complicated relationship. She was beautiful and charming, but there was always this undercurrent of competition from her side. If I achieved something, she had to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, she suddenly needed to date a lawyer. When we bought our house, she complained for months about her apartment, fishing for our parents to help her upgrade. It was exhausting. Adam, bless his heart, would always say, she's your only sister, Bridget. Family is important. 2 years ago, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a bartender. Their relationship seemed volatile, full of dramatic breakups. Then came the pregnancy announcement at Thanksgiving dinner. It was unexpected, to say the least. After all our heartbreak, all our struggles, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what Adam and I had desperately wanted. I pushed down the familiar sting of jealousy. I truly wanted to be the best Ann I could be. Lucas was born a healthy baby. I was there, with flowers and a handmade blanket I'd spent months knitting. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood, calling me in tears about colic or exhaustion. I stepped in, often watching Lucas overnight so she could sleep. Adam was less involved, and I'd always assumed it was because our own infertility struggles made it too painful for him to bond with a baby that wasn't ours. He was always kind when she brought Lucas over, but he maintained a certain distance. Then came that terrible Tuesday. Adam complained of a headache before work. I begged him to stay home. Just a migraine, he'd insisted, kissing me goodbye. I'll call you after the meeting. That call never came. Instead, the hospital called. By the time I arrived, he was gone. Brain aneurysm. Nothing could be done. He was 36. The next days were a blur of arrangements, grief, and emptiness. Cassandra was strangely absent, sending texts about Lucas being sick. When she did appear at the funeral, she stayed briefly, kept to herself, and left early. I was too numb to think much of it. Then, Lucas's first birthday party. The last thing I wanted. Adam would want you to go, my mother insisted. So I drove to Cassandra's small rental house, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat, dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I plastered on a smile and knocked. Her friend, Jenna, opened the door, her eyes widening. Oh, Bridget, you made it, she said, her voice strained. In the backyard, I found my parents looking uncomfortable. Everyone seemed on edge, conversation stopping when I approached. I put it down to people not knowing how to act around a new widow. After 30 agonizing minutes, Cassandra emerged, carrying Lucas. She looked energized, giddy almost. A new dress, fresh highlights. She barely acknowledged me. Then, she tapped a spoon against a cup, calling for attention. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice carrying across the yard. I've been keeping a secret, one I can no longer hide, especially after recent events. A chill ran down my spine. Something was terribly wrong. Lucas is not Tyler's son, she announced, her eyes finding mine across the yard. He is Adam's. The world stopped. I heard gasps, felt my father stiffen beside me, but it was all background noise to the rushing in my ears. My sister was claiming she'd slept with my husband, and that the nephew I'd lovingly cared for was Adam's. It was so absurd, so outrageous. I swear, I almost laughed. But she wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held it up. He wanted his son provided for. This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned should go to Lucas. Every eye in the yard turned to me. Pity, morbid curiosity, discomfort. My parents were stark white. But then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, a smile tugged at my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that comes when something is so ridiculously, outrageously false it becomes comical. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the laughter bubbling up. Oh, I see, I said, my voice eerily calm. I took a sip of water, just to buy myself time. May I see this will, Cassandra? Her confident expression faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected this. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document. I scanned it quickly, noting the inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was all wrong. And the signature, it looked like Adam's, but the connecting stroke between the A and D was off. The final flourish, too pronounced. It was a clumsy forgery. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back to her. Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now. That's it? She asked, confusion evident. You're not going to say anything else? Not right now. I replied, grabbing my purse. This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later. I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmurs, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Once inside, safely out of view, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It started small, then grew until tears streamed down my face. Not tears of joy, but a strange, volatile mix of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief at my sister's audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know. Something Adam and I had never shared with anyone. Something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful, but utterly, biologically impossible. The truth about Adam and Cassandra began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even conceived. We'd invited her over for dinner to celebrate her new job. It was a pleasant evening until I had to take a work call. When I returned, the atmosphere had shifted. Adam looked uncomfortable. Cassandra was sitting too close, her hand on his arm, laughing. I thought nothing of it then. But later that night, Adam was troubled. There's something I need to tell you, he said, sitting on the edge of our bed. He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments. A suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he'd rebuffed her, she'd laughed it off as a joke. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go, an isolated incident. But it wasn't. Over the next few months, she found ways to touch him when I wasn't looking, sent flirtatious texts, even showed up at his office. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained his boundaries, and told me immediately. After the office incident, we confronted my parents. It didn't go well. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures, that Cassandra just looked up to him. My mother even suggested, with good intentions but terrible judgment, that perhaps Adam was feeling flattered and exaggerating. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We would create distance from Cassandra. We declined invitations, made sure we were never alone with her. Adam even blocked her number after a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain. The diagnosis, a varicocele, requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery, given the extensive nature of the varicocele and the potential for recurrence. It was a difficult decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was right for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this private. Even our parents didn't know. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we learned to protect our privacy. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and Adam's doctors. After the surgery, as Adam was recovering, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. Cassandra isn't done, he'd said, sitting in our garden. I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day. I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The next week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him. Adam detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James recommended documenting everything. The unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even texts. You never know what might become relevant, James advised. Better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later. We followed his advice, creating a file of everything. Adam also updated his actual will, properly through official channels, making sure everything came to me. James kept copies, and we placed the originals in a safety deposit box. Just in case, Adam had said, though I plan to be around to deal with any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who knew us well, expressed his condolences. I sat alone in the small viewing room and opened the box Adam had jokingly called our disaster preparation kit. Inside was exactly what I needed. Adam's legitimate will, notarized and properly executed, leaving everything to me. Medical records detailing his vasectomy 2 years before Lucas's conception, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. A journal Adam had kept, documenting every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra. Printed copies of her suggestive text messages. A letter from our attorney confirming he'd witnessed Adam's legitimate will. And at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. My dearest Bridget, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and you have needed to access these documents. I hope it is many years from now, when we are old and gray and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But if not, if the worst has happened and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I tried to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love. But you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam. Tears streamed down my face. Even in death, his love and foresight protected me. My practical, thoughtful husband had anticipated this. Not the specific scenario, perhaps, but the possibility that Cassandra might try to use his death to her advantage. I returned everything to the box except what I needed. Copies of the medical records, the legitimate will, selected journal entries. Then I called James Wilson. James, silver-haired and wise, was Adam's former mentor. He was one of the good ones, he said, embracing me. I agreed, my voice catching. And it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister. I explained what happened, showing him the forged will. James examined it. This is an amateurish forgery, he said. The language is all wrong. The signature, while similar, would never stand up to expert analysis. But the fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling. Then I showed him the documents from the safety deposit box, Adam's vasectomy records, his legitimate will, the journal. Adam was nothing if not thorough, James said, reviewing the materials. These medical records alone disprove her claim about Lucas's paternity. It's biologically impossible. What should I do? I asked. I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I can't let her take half of our home based on a lie. James leaned back. We need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator. There's likely a motivation beyond simple cruelty here. People rarely attempt fraud of this nature without financial pressure. He recommended Frank Delaney, a former police detective. Frank arrived an hour later, a stocky man with a no-nonsense attitude. He took detailed notes. I realized how little I actually knew about my sister's current life. We'd grown apart. I'll need a few days, he said. My preliminary focus will be on her financial situation and the child's actual father. 3 days later, Frank called for a meeting. Mrs. Preston, he began, I've uncovered some concerning information. Cassandra was in dire financial straits. Over $75,000 in debt across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who needed heart surgery shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal. She was facing eviction for months behind on rent. As for Tyler, he'd abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, moving to Seattle, paying minimal, irregular child support. Frank then produced printouts of text messages. She's been telling friends about her plans to claim part of your house for weeks. The messages were damning, exchanged with Jenna, the friend who'd opened the door at the party. Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt physically ill reading the calculated coldness of my sister's words. This wasn't just opportunism. It was premeditated fraud, designed to capitalize on my grief. There's more, Frank added gently. Tyler Martin, the actual father, has a history of domestic violence charges and a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child. I sat in stunned silence. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage to solve her problems. And her choices had put Lucas in danger. What do I do with all this? I asked, looking between James and Frank. I can't just expose all of this publicly. Lucas is innocent. You have several options, Bridget, James said. We could file charges for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties, even jail time. Or, he continued, seeing my distress, we could handle this privately. Confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. I left with a heavy heart and a folder full of evidence. That evening, I called my therapist. I'm so angry I can barely see straight, I admitted. But Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister. Dr. Chen listened. It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has existed since childhood. The current situation is an escalation, not an anomaly. What would you do? I asked desperately. I can't tell you what decision to make, she replied. But I will say that compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences. After much reflection, I decided I would confront Cassandra privately, with all the evidence, offering her a choice. Face potential legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas while requiring accountability from her. With renewed determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. We need to talk about the will, I said. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just you know Lucas. I knew you'd come around, she replied, sounding smugly satisfied. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing, arranging documents, setting up recording devices on James's advice. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, so I couldn't record secretly, but I could ask for permission. At precisely 2, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. Cassandra stood on the porch, looking polished, confident. Come in, I said, leading her to the living room. I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation. It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing. She hesitated briefly. Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, though I think this can be pretty straightforward. The will is clear. I turned on the recorder, stating the date and time, confirming her consent. Then I sat back. Before we discuss the will, I'd like to understand exactly what you are claiming happened between you and Adam. Cassandra launched into a well-rehearsed story about an affair 2 years ago. Meetings at a downtown hotel, Adam confessing his unhappiness in our marriage, Lucas conceived during these encounters. He always meant to tell you, she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. But then Lucas was born with a heart condition, and he didn't want to add stress. He promised he would provide for his son, though. I listened without interrupting, noting the inconsistencies. When she finished, I began asking questions. Which hotel? The Mandarin Oriental, she replied quickly. What room? She faltered. It was on a high floor. I don't recall. What days of the week did you usually meet? Tuesdays? Sometimes Thursdays, when he told you he was working late. I continued with increasingly specific questions. What did Adam typically order from room service? What side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after? Details that only someone truly intimate with Adam would know. Cassandra grew increasingly flustered. Why does any of this matter? She finally snapped. The point is Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him. Actually, I said calmly, opening my folder. Both of those claims are demonstrably false. I placed the medical records on the table. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following surgery for a varicocele. It was completely successful. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the records with trembling hands. These could be faked, she said weakly. They are not, I replied. And Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity, if necessary. But that is just the beginning. Next, I produced the legitimate will. This is Adam's actual will, properly filed. As you can see, it leaves everything to me, with no mention of Lucas. Her confidence was visibly crumbling, but she tried to rally. He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent. The will you have, I said evenly, is a forgery. A poor one, I might add. Creating a fraudulent will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. I continued, methodically presenting evidence. Adam's journal documenting her advances, the text messages with Jenna, Frank's report detailing her financial troubles, the eviction notice, Tyler's abandonment. We know everything, Cassandra, I said, as she sat in stunned silence. The question now is what happens next. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears I'd seen her use to manipulate our parents, but deep, body-racking sobs. I didn't know what else to do, she finally choked out. I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be out on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house. So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I asked, my voice hardening. To tell everyone he cheated on me, to forge legal documents? I was desperate, she shouted, her sadness turning to anger. You have everything. This big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation. Her outburst hung in the air. The raw honesty of it, stripped of the manipulation and lies, reached something in me. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but perhaps understanding. Lucas is Tyler's son, isn't he? I asked more gently. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes. Adam never touched me. Not like that. I did try with him years ago. He always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. And the will. My friend Dave helped me create it. He does graphic design and thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you would actually look into it so thoroughly. I turned off the recorder and sat back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched nervously. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. I know, but that would hurt Lucas. I continued. And despite everything, he is my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward. So, here's what's going to happen. You are going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair, that Lucas is not Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You will apologize publicly to me and to Adam's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small. We'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I will help you and Lucas. Not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs, and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that after what I did? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. There would be conditions, I continued. You will enter therapy and financial counseling. You will maintain steady employment. And you will allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he is being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra was quiet for a long moment. I don't deserve your help. No, I agreed. You don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care. And I deserve to have my husband's memory untarnished. This solution gives us both what we need. After further discussion, she agreed. We'd meet with James the next day. She would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. As I showed her out, she paused. I really am sorry, Bridget. I've been jealous of you my whole life. Everything always seemed to come so easily to you. Nothing about my life has been easy, I replied. You just never bothered to look past the surface. Maybe it's time you started. The family dinner was tense. My parents arrived early, my mother bringing her signature lasagna as a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she'd said. But Cassandra has been calling us in tears, saying you're forcing her to come to some sort of family meeting. Just wait until everyone's here, I'd replied. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7, we were all seated around my dining room table. James had advised me to record this conversation too. Thank you all for coming, I began, explaining the recording. I've asked Cassandra to share some important information. Cassandra looked pale. I lied about Lucas being Adam's son, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party. My parents stared in shock. But why would you do such a thing? My father demanded. Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister? To Adam's reputation? Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation, her voice gaining strength as she detailed the mounting debts, Tyler's abandonment, the eviction notice. My mother's expression shifted. Oh, honey, she said when Cassandra finished. Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies. Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house. Of course, we couldn't give you that kind of money, my father said. But we could have helped with the rent. Instead, you tried to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband. I know it was wrong, Cassandra admitted. Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted to. My mother turned to me in alarm. You wouldn't do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget? I felt a flash of frustration. Even now, I could, I said firmly. What she did was not just immoral, but illegal. Forgery and fraud are felonies. But she's family, my mother insisted. And she has Lucas to think about. I'm family, too. I replied, my voice rising slightly. Your daughter, the one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity. Where was your concern for me in all this? My father looked uncomfortable. Of course, we care about you, Bridget. But Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance. And whose fault is that? I asked. You have been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you had let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior. My mother gasped. That's hardly fair, Bridget. Cassandra surprisingly shook her head. No, Mom, you haven't. Bridget is right. You always made excuses for me. Always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. My parents looked stunned. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility. So what happens now? My father asked, looking between us. Is Cassandra going to jail? No, I said. I have decided not to press charges under certain conditions. I outlined the agreement. That's very generous, my father said, relieved. It's more than generous, Cassandra agreed quietly. It's more than I deserve. While my mother said, brightening, this is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized. Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us. It's not that simple, Mom, I said firmly. Trust has been broken here. The healing will take time, if it happens at all, and there need to be boundaries going forward. What kind of boundaries? She asked, looking worried. For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I'm involved in Lucas's life because I love him. But Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time. My mother looked distressed. But we're family. We need to stick together, especially now. Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse, Mom, I said gently. What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family. The rest of the dinner was subdued. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too. My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we had. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. I really am sorry, she said again. Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything. For the years of competition and jealousy, for not being the sister you deserved. I know, I replied. And I hope therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I considered the question. I don't know, I answered truthfully. But I'm willing to see where this new path takes us. For Lucas's sake. And maybe someday, for ours, too. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, watching the spring bulbs push through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted were blooming, a riot of yellow. It was a bittersweet ache, knowing he'd planted them with hopes of seeing them bloom. So much had changed. The trust fund for Lucas was established, helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while requiring monitoring, was responding well, and he was growing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by truly embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize patterns of behavior, the constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had characterized many of her decisions. She'd found steady employment as an office manager. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him to the park or children's museum. Cassandra and I didn't pretend to be close, but we'd found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. My parents had struggled initially with the new boundaries I'd established, but over time, they too had adjusted. As for me, the grief support group I joined had become a lifeline. 12 strangers, bound by loss, had become friends. 3 months after the confrontation, I'd established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships. It gave me purpose, seeing Adam's legacy continue. Old friends had stepped up. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation. He was a professor of ethics, thoughtful and kind. We started as friends, sharing coffee, then occasional dinners. It was different than what I had with Adam, as it should be. Michael understood that Adam would always be part of my life. We were taking things slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries had validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me, even in his absence. I had learned difficult lessons, that family relationships need clear boundaries. That documentation is not just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity. That forgiveness doesn't have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue. That sometimes, the people we expect to protect us are the ones we need protection from. But I had also learned about my own strength. I had faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated legal complexities, and made difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while processing the devastating loss of my husband. I had found a way to honor Adam's memory while beginning to build a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. I thought about how grief is like that too. Not a straight line, but a series of seasons. I wasn't the same person I had been before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had. You couldn't have known what would happen after you were gone, I said softly to the garden Adam had loved. But somehow, you prepared me to face it. And in that way, your love protects me still. As I turned to go back inside, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Not because the grief was gone, it never would be completely, but because I had found a way to carry it alongside hope for the future. Adam had given me that gift, teaching me that love endures even when the person is gone, that preparation and honesty are acts of profound caring. If there's one thing I would share with anyone facing betrayal within their family, it is this: protect yourself with both documentation and boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, and the ones who don't were never safe for you to begin with. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? How did you navigate that? I'd really love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Thanks for watching.